Hello, Miss Vance. This is my presentation on the Crimean War by Adonis Talbert. Okay. Now, the when and the where of the war. The Crimean War started back in the 1800s on October 4th, 1853, and the war ended February 1st, 1856. So basically, the war was a little bit over a 2 year war, which is pretty short considering how long wars usually continue in Europe because they are good at war. They fight a lot. And the war, as for the where, the war was fought in the Crimean Peninsula. Now, the people of the war, let me move my little monitor. The important people of the war. So there were four major countries that were involved in the war, or that did most of the fighting in the war, and that would be Russia, led by the Tsar Nicholas the First, not Nicholas the Second. Um, I had to tell Google that because I couldn't find it. Any pictures of Nicholas the First? They all show Nicholas the Second. But Great Britain, led by George Hamilton, who was the prime minister at the time, who, fun fact, had already had political experience. He had been in politics, Great Britain's politics, for 2 years before he officially became the prime minister of Great Britain. The Ottoman Empire, led by Omar Pasha, which is the second picture in the middle of the only other black and white picture, and France, led by the third Napoleon. And fun fact, I had no idea there were three Napoleons. I thought it was only one, but the more you know. All right. And what caused the Crimean War? So this war was caused by many of the things, or the two main things that caused a lot of war in just Europe and the world in general, and that was religion and power. Those were the two things that really caused the conflict that led to the Crimean War. We have the Ottoman Empire, who we see is weakening at this time, and Russia was ready to take over, as well as the fact that the Russian Orthodox Christians that were the subjects of the Ottoman Sultan were being oppressed, and that was, basically an excuse for Russia to get involved and try to take over the land. And there was also another dispute as far as religion between Russia and France, with the Russian Orthodox and the Roman Catholic. The churches that were in Palestine were being fought over. And not only that, but also for France and Great Britain, their reasons for joining, they didn't want Russia to continue to gain any more power and push towards the Middle East, because Russia was already a big problem at the time. Oh, there we go. So the numbers. The numbers include, the people were fighting, the amount of people who died. And as we can see from this war, that Russia had superior numbers, or manpower, as you would say. They had nearly 900K soldiers, being 11K short, while the Allies only had about 600K, a little bit over 600K soldiers. But what we could see from the war is that Russia suffered way more casualties than the Allies did, as we can see on the screen there. And the craziest thing about this war was that most of the deaths that we see were not as a result of the combat that they actually participated in. Most of the death came from the disease that was suffered by the troops in the war. Like, for example, I don't know if you can see on your screen right now, but Great Britain, they lost about 2,755 soldiers, but that was due to combat. The rest of the soldiers they lost, the 17K, was due to the disease that they had to deal with. So, as we can see, it was mainly as a cause to disease to the fighting, which is usually not the case with most wars. And we'll go over some of the major battles and the events of the Crimean War. And the very first official battle of the Crimean War was the Battle of Alma. And this is where we see the Allies take their first victory over Russia. Britain and France had taken over the naval base there. And this battle was important because, of course, the first battle of any war is important. You want to set the tone for the war, get a first win, get the morale up. And as we can see, the Allies were able to get that first win, and it actually led to them winning the entire war. No spoilers, but you know. And another one of the major battles was the Battle of Balaclava, and we see this is important because the British have a major supply road connecting between Balaclava and the heights of Sevastopol, which was a major base for the Russians. So the Russians attempted to capture this in order to, cut the supply leading up to that base. And as we can see, as it says on your screen, the Russians had actually failed to stop them. And this led to their eventual downfall at the siege of Sevastopol. And there's an interesting fact about that. And like we were talking about earlier, the siege that I mentioned, the siege actually went on for a total of 11 months. And you may be asking, why did this happen? So it was kind of like an unmovable force versus an unstoppable object. They just kind of canceled out because the Allies, they didn't have enough strength to really like effectively crush and really completely stomp out the Russians, so to speak. But the Russians, their defense was strong, resilient, but they didn't have enough power to like officially break the siege and make them retreat. So they just kept attacking for 11 months. And eventually the Allies were able to take over the naval base, which was a very crucial battle. I mean, any battle fought for 11 months over one base has to be an important base. And the Allies were able to get that base, which was very important. And one of the last things I want to mention is actually the charge of the Light Brigade. This was a part of the Battle of Balaclava, which I didn't know myself. The charge of the Light Brigade was basically the military advance of the Light Brigade into heavy Russian troops. They were armed with cannons and rifles, and the Light Brigade, they just have, their horses and their sabers. So they ran in to basically hellfire bullets and cannons. And it was a very idiotic move. And the suicidal attack was so famous and infamous that it led to the poem made by Tennyson in 1855 of the same name. And the final outcome of the Crimean War was after Austria threatened to join the Allies in the Crimean War, Russia was basically like, okay, we'll end the war, and they accepted the preliminary peace terms in 1856. And this led to the Treaty of Paris. There are a lot of treaties of Paris, but this was the Crimean War, which basically guaranteed the integrity of the Ottoman Empire and obligated Russia to surrender southern Bessarabia at the Mount of Dumuzi. And overall, this war was basically a war fought over religion and power, and an attempt to basically keep Russia from continuing to expand, which we see something very similar to what Russia is doing now to the Ukraine. So, how you say history repeats itself, and it seems that Russia is repeating itself here, and hopefully history will repeat itself, and, we, the Allies, are the people who support Ukraine, can come out victorious, and Russia won't be able to take over Ukraine and won't do anything drastic. But that's the end of my presentation. Here's the works cited page. And yep, thank you for watching my presentation. Have a good nice day.